Natural Resources Canada says that BC accounts for almost 46% of mined copper production in Canada. Joining us now to discuss is American political journalist Jackson Gosnell. Jackson, thank you for the time today.
Thanks so much. Good to be with you.
Now, President Trump has stated that he doesn't expect a Canadian trade deal and will enforce tariffs, not negotiations, after the August 1st deadline. What does this hardline posture signal about U.S. trade strategy right now?
Well, I think the president is very serious that he wants to see these things implemented. And if people aren't willing to come to the table, they're going to have to pay a stiff fine for not doing so. I think the president is executing this same strategy throughout the world with other countries as well. It is unfortunate in some ways because there are people on the receiving end of this and their economy may be impacted in a negative way. I think the president has an outlook on the states. He wants the states to be profitable, to do really well, and he believes that this is a great part of his agenda that needs to be implemented.
Now, with Donald Trump threatening up to 35% tariffs on Canadian imports, with CUSMA goods remaining exempt, what key areas are most vulnerable, and how might that reshape Canadian export behavior?
So I'm not exactly so sure what areas are vulnerable and what might happen, but what I can tell you is what the president has been saying, which is that he doesn't believe that Canada pays enough. He says that we have a deficit to Canada and they've been essentially ripping us off for a long time. And so this has been part of his campaign promise. It's been something he's talking about for months, and we're finally at the point to where this seems to be going into place. It's coming to fruition, for better or for worse, and we'll see what ends up happening.
Now, Canadians are starting to open up interprovincial trade barriers and break things down and rely more on Canadians to trade with. Do you see that putting a bit of a wedge in the Canadian and U.S. relationship, because Canada might actually just start relying on Canada and the U.S. won't have Canada as much as they used to?
You know, I don't think it'll be as big of a problem as it's being made out to be. Now, maybe I'm going to be wrong. We'll see what happens. But I have seen reporting that Canadians are buying more Canadian products and trying to essentially avoid American products as a result of this. But the United States is pretty self-sufficient. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that we don't rely on any other country, because that would be a lie. But what I will say is we are decently sufficient. I don't expect it to impact us a ton. Certainly, we may feel some impacts, but I think, again, this is all part of the president's strategy and his greater work at play to try and make the United States the best and the greatest and all the positive things for the states.
Now, we know that the states are challenging the president implementing tariffs, but just how likely is it that Congress gets that power back? Or will that depend on the results of the midterm elections and who controls the House?
I think it's a bit of both. If you have Democrats in control, they're going to resist a lot of what this president is doing. The president is executing a lot of his campaign promises and is certainly delivering on those promises pretty largely. And Democrats don't like that. In a segment earlier, someone said, if you're a Republican, things are going great. If you're a Democrat, it's going pretty horribly, because he's not budging and in some cases is going even further than what was initially discussed. So I think the president will continue to do what he's doing now. But if Democrats regain some type of control, they're going to try and put a hard line up against the president and get him to reverse course. I don't know if they'll be successful. The Supreme Court, weighing in on some of his decisions lately, has really supported what the president's doing and his power to do some of the things that he's been doing.
Now, the initial reason that Donald Trump chose to implement tariffs on Canada was because of the fentanyl issue in both Canada and Mexico. Is that as big of an issue as Donald Trump is making it seem? And is it valid to impose all of these tariffs because of fentanyl trafficking?
It is for other countries. I don't think Canada is leaking as much fentanyl as some people think into the States. So I will be very honest with you about that. I do think that we have been essentially ripped off by Canada, some people could argue. But I don't know that the fentanyl crisis is in large part due to Canada. Now, certainly there are other countries who are really pouring this really bad stuff into the States, and it's killing people. I saw a clip just a few days ago of a police officer making contact with fentanyl while conducting some sort of law enforcement activity and actually passing out and having to get Narcan. So it is a big crisis. It's killing a lot of people in the States, but I don't think that it flows through Canada as much. I understand the president, though, is using that as sort of a strategy to bring people to the negotiating table. He has a reason for everything he does. He's a very calculated guy. Oftentimes, he's very transparent in telling people what he's doing and why he's doing it. He's funneling it through the fentanyl issue, but I think it's much larger in his point that Canada has ripped off the United States.
Now, you've mentioned that a few times. Canada is ripping off the United States. And I think that's the perspective from Americans.
Yeah.
Americans are very angry and they feel ripped off. Whereas from the Canadian perspective, Canadians feel hurt. And they're a little confused as to someone that used to be a great trading partner and our closest neighbor is now saying, no, you're ripping us off and we don't appreciate it. You know, there's been booing at hockey games. There's been politics is being brought into things that people argue politics don't belong in. Do you see this friendship or this relationship that Canada and the U.S. once had going back to normal? Or do you think that this wedge of feeling ripped off and feeling upset is going to kind of continue to stay there and just drive a bigger wedge?
Well, you have to remember, we're just a few months into the Trump administration, and we have 4 years of this, and we're in the preliminary stages. We're having some bumps along the way because people don't like what the president is doing around the world. I would say that a lot of people within the states do. Now, certainly there's opposition there too, but the relationship certainly, I believe, can be repaired. I think we're just in a bit of a rough patch right now in these preliminary stages, so the president can try and get what he wants, but I don't think the relationship has been salvaged so terribly that it can't be restored.
Well, Jackson Gosnell, thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks so much.